Well, since our last interview, Keefe D has been arrested for the murder of Tupac Shakur.
Mm.
You know about this?
I heard last time I was here, the feds called you in this room.
Yeah. Well, not the feds.
I don't know if they're
Las Vegas PD.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not a federal case. It's a state case. It's Las Vegas. Yeah. Now I've talked about this publicly. Like,
yeah.
Las Vegas PD had called me like a dozen times trying to get me to cooperate in this case. They want my raw footage, whatever else. But I just
go to hell.
I'm not cooperating.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you guys have the footage that's been publicly released.
Mm-hmm.
There's really nothing else that I know of from the raw footage they could use, but I'm not going to cooperate against someone who is sitting down to do interviews with me. Mm-hmm. That's my take.
Yeah.
But ultimately, he is now denied bond.
That's some fucked up shit.
And his trial date is in June of 2024.
And this is because
he put himself into that crime scene.
Mm. So
he put himself into the car.
Right, but wasn't that part of this whole thing in the day one? Like,
right. Okay. So I'll explain this. I've said this a couple times before, but this is worth noting. What Keefe D got, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, was something called a proffer agreement. Right. It's also called Queen for a Day.
Queen for a Day?
Queen for a Day. And the day part is very important in that phrase. So let's just say I'm the police and I get together with you and you have a bunch of crimes that you're accused of. In the case of Keefe D, he was doing a PCP. He had a whole PCP rate.
I've heard something.
He was facing life in prison. PCP is an extremely dangerous drug, and the amounts that he had would have put him away forever. So a proffer agreement says, okay, look, so let's just say you're Keefe D, I'm the police. I'll say, look, I know about your PCP case. Tell me about the Tupac murder from beginning to end. And as long as it all matches up with what I already know and what we could prove, I will make this whole PCP case go away.
You gotta tell me everything.
You gotta tell me everything.
Right.
But whatever you tell me can't be used against you to convict you. But it's only for that day. Meaning that if you decide to retell the story later, or if they go and find other witnesses to testify against you, to say that you were there or whatever else, what you're saying can't be used against you unless you re-say it or someone else testifies against you. There's enough evidence to convict you.
Okay.
But for all intents and purposes, what it means is that if you say it that day and you never repeat it, you basically walk away clean. But Keefe D wrote a book.
Gotcha.
And then he did a Vlad TV interview. And then he did a Camp Capone interview. They did an Art of Dialogue interview.
Okay.
Then he did another Vlad TV interview. Then he did another Art of Dialogue interview.
So the mistake
is... He did a BT interview.
Yeah, so the mistake is to kind of conflate that with attorney-client privilege, that type of thing.
Kind of.
Yeah, so yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. If whatever you tell to your lawyer can't be used against you, but if you decide to go do an interview and repeat everything you said to your lawyer, it's now considered evidence.
Yeah, so it's conflating with that and a get out of jail free card.
He basically had a get out of jail free card. But, and people have, I interviewed with Pierce Morgan and a bunch of other people about this. From my point of view, I think that, because what happened was when he did the proffer agreement and he met with this guy, Greg Kading, he was the detective that was in charge of this.
Yeah.
Greg Kading secretly recorded him and then released part of that audio later on after he left the force. And that in turn let everyone know that, Keefe D's a snitch, even though he told on Orlando, his nephew, who was dead at the time. People still had their 2 cents. And I feel like he was so bothered by it that he took it upon himself to try to tell his story, to try to say, yes, I did cooperate, but, everyone was dead. I didn't hurt anybody, et cetera, et cetera. But in the process, these interviews became so big. And I remember someone who I know actually talked to like the lead detective, and they're like, yeah, this Vlad TV interview really got this on our radar because it it was getting millions and millions and millions of views. So they decided to, first they raided his house, and then they got a grand jury indictment, and then they arrested him.
Right. And so now they're trying to say he was the shooter?
Well, he was involved in the conspiracy of the murder. You don't have to be the shooter,
right.
But it becomes very gray area. Now, let's just say me and you go out for a drive, like we do sometimes, and I decide to go shoot someone while you're in the car. You can't get charged for it. I mean, you didn't know I was going to do something crazy like that, right? But if me and you say, listen, Mike, I got this guy I really hate that lives down the street. I'm going to go get a gun, and, we're going to go do this together. And, okay, I'll be the driver. You be the lookout. You load my gun up for me or whatever. Like, if you're aware of it and you're going along with it, then both of us will be charged, even though you weren't the shooter. And that's basically what they're trying to say, is that although he wasn't the shooter, he was aware of it. He was involved with it. He pushed the conspiracy forward. He was a willing participant in the conspiracy of what ultimately happened, which was a murder as well as a shooting of Suge Knight.
Yeah. I recall the things he said, and I think it's kind of a trip, because I think he admittedly said if they were on his side of the car, what he would have done.
Yeah. There's a lot, man.
Maybe he shouldn't have said all that.
If I was him, I would have just kept my mouth shut. I would have just not done anything. And people are like, oh, Vlad's the reason. It's like, he wrote a book. He wrote a damn book. We had a copy of the book before we did the interview. The interview was essentially following the book page by page. It is what it is. I also don't, the other thing I don't understand is, his house got raided, but there was no charges yet. And he knows what's going to happen next. Why would you just stick around in Las Vegas?
Shit, man. I think a lot of this shit comes down to fame.
You think?
Yeah. On both sides. Keefe D, fame. Greg Kading, fame.
Yeah.
Cops who were prosecuting, fame.
Yeah. Vlad TV, fame.
Fame.
Yeah.
There's a thing of, when people get up in certain ages, especially men, they want to leave their freaking flag somewhere. And you could be a janitor, but you also are the head usher at your church. You got to have something. So I feel like, even though they know what this man, what he did, and knows how much he didn't do or whatever, still, you get a chance to be a headliner by prosecuting this brother.
Yeah.
Or not. If you don't do it, then nobody knows who you are. Nobody's singing your praises or your name or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that shit is so fucking important nowadays with this whole social media and shit, that everybody wants their little 15 minutes. So personally, I think that's in my opinion, that's what's happening all the way around this whole scenario, and that's what you get.